welcome. You're listening to Lana the Educator. If you're interested in all things educational, then like and subscribe. If you're a first time listener, welcome. Today, I will be talking about social emotional learning and why I think that it is the missing link. You see, there are just certain expectations and common experiences that one faces when they are transitioning from one place to the next. And this applies to any sort of place, not just a school, business places, new workplaces, new groups, a new country, anything of this sort. And I'm not talking about transitioning and crossing over to the other side. I'm talking about changing workplaces where, specifically in teaching, this means more than having to deal with co-workers. We have to spend a lot of time interacting with students. After all, we know that they are one of the main reasons we are there and we do what we do. And sometimes when you transition to a new place, aside from there being maybe a culture shock, people, if you come from one type of place to another, maybe waiting, or they may continually ask you what's your experience like, which is no problem. It's all part of the onboarding process. But one of the things that stood out to me when I moved from one place to another was a general lack of, and I'm going to put this bluntly, I think just manners amongst the students. And it may seem like a small thing to people listening, but all the cliches really came to mind. You know, manners make it a man, you catch more flies with honey, etc. And I was really able to see the merit in these sayings. And some people, including myself, tried to find out why was that so, you know? And sometimes I put it down to not having social interaction in the traditional sense during online learning 4 years ago. But I eventually thought, that couldn't be all. And then, as expected, when we returned to school, some of the classroom behaviors were not there. Some of the simple things that we may have taken for granted, like the raising of hands to answer a question, or asking permission before leaving one's seat, or asking permission to go to the bathroom, these were glaringly absent. And in previous years, these served as part of the rhythm of the classroom interaction. So I think it really stood out to me that there was just something, a bee in my bonnet to say, well, I couldn't really put my finger on what was happening, and it was really this. So it became clear how we took for granted how these things impacted the smooth running of classrooms and the wider school community. Now, in moving forward, and moving about a new environment, one could see how the absence of simple pleasantries and things like good manners and simply saying good morning or please and excuse me impacted the wider school culture. Oftentimes, in interacting with students, I had to remind them of common courtesy and manners, and those who didn't bristle at my suggestions and, you know, gentle proddings almost seem embarrassed to utter phrases like please and thank you to their classmates. After a while, I came to realize that it wasn't that they had forgotten, but in many cases, they simply did not know. They had not been taught, they had not learned these things. And this saddened me a bit. And I found myself telling them sometimes that many of their problems stem from not engaging in common courtesies, which even if they had not been taught, somehow I think instinctively they knew that manners and kindness and common courtesy wasn't taking place, and that landed them in situations where they ended up in conflicts or offending someone, and this eventually led to fights in some cases. So I was struggling to navigate how to deal with this because these are things that we take for granted. These are things that seemingly never had to be taught at this level, since students already came to us having been taught the basics at home or school. Now, when that was removed, that traditional structure of the school system, I mean, there were many advantages to online learning, but I mean, we really were able to see how the social interaction was very important. And now, when there were no longer virtual hands to raise on Zoom, or virtual waiting rooms, or opportunities to mute at the push of a button, you had this equilibrium taking place. And I couldn't properly function. And I had this nagging feeling that for a while there's something I had to do. And it dawned on me one day that my perspective of what success meant had to shift. We often talk of the hidden curriculum, but there is another quiet yet powerful underlying force at work, crucial in shaping the future of our students, and that is social emotional learning. And what that means is that we had to find a way to encourage them to engage in a process where they would apply the knowledge and skills and attitudes that would allow them to develop healthy identities, that would allow them to manage their emotions and achieve personal and collective goals, and to feel and show empathy for others. It was important for us to show them, and it is important for us to show them how to establish and maintain supportive relationships and make responsible and caring decisions. I realized students didn't know how to deal with others because they had not been taught how to deal with others. And what was needed was actually social emotional teaching so that social emotional learning could take place, because this encompasses a wide range of skills that are crucial for managing emotions and building and maintaining relationships. It's crucial for making decisions and for personal well-being. And all of these things are important for future success. So I'm here talking and you're probably wondering, why does this social emotional learning thing matter? Well, based on what I described, you can see the connection between social emotional learning and academic achievement, if that is what motivates you. You know, most people think children go to school, they just are only interested in whether they get those passes or those grades, or whether they placed in the first 3 or first 5 or first 10 in their classroom, or they get that prize. But any educator will tell you that students with strong social emotional learning skills perform better academically. And the benefits of social emotional learning to students can also be seen in the life skills that they will exhibit. Such students with social emotional learning skills, you find that they're often better at conflict resolution, they're often better at critical thinking and communication skills. All of these serve to benefit them later in life, later in their careers, and all throughout their personal lives. Of course, you can't deny the benefits to mental health and emotional well-being, which goes a long way in creating a feeling of safety and developing a place where they can learn. When students thrive emotionally, there is transformation. I'm telling you, we have witnessed it. And there is a sense of developing a place where they can learn. And when they thrive emotionally, there is a transformation of the learning environment. And then there is a transformation of the culture at large. So all of this sounds really good. I want you to be able to do it. So how can you do it in your spaces and in your classrooms? Well, one of the first things you can do is just start by integrating it simply into your daily routines and into your classroom practices. And you can start the day with a student check-in. And this means you simply ask the student, how are you going? How are you feeling today? And you would see the change that takes place when you eventually do this. And there are other types of questions you can ask in a student check-in. A check-in really means that you're asking the students things to be able to learn more about how they are feeling. And this can eventually help them and help you as the instructor be more intentional in providing resources for any mental health needs or emotional needs that they may have. So simply ask, how are you feeling today? What emotion are you feeling the most today? You can ask them, what was the favorite part of the class today? Or during the past week, how often did you feel excited? How often did you feel safe? How often did you feel angry? You know, do you feel bullied by other students? And it's important to use these things so that they become interventions in your classroom in order to, do your housekeeping, per se, to make children feel safe. And in this way, you are able to review whatever goals you had for your class to adapt and adjust. And when the students answer these questions, you are able to give them feedback, not just on how they are doing, and you are gathering feedback as well, but whether they're able to meet the goals of the day, which gives them a sense of accomplishment. And it also allows us a chance for you to connect with your students. And check-ins, the purpose of check-ins are very important because it can help you um, as an intervention strategy to deal with struggling students because it serves as a tool to build students' confidence in their ability to succeed in school because it's increasing positive behaviors, which is something that we definitely want in our schools to increase our school culture and climate. Next, you can nurture a culture of kindness. And you can do this by acknowledging and simply sharing acts of kindness. And this is very important for us to start early on with our youngest groups in kindergarten and first year and so forth. When you create a culture of kindness, they say pay it forward, you start to see the transformational changes that take place. So you can do this, for example, by explicitly teaching kindness and respect. Some of the children, that's not the practice in their home at all. They've never seen it demonstrated, they never seen it modeled, or they rarely do it. So you have to give them opportunities to practice it in a safe situation while they are learning. And you can't assume that the children know this coming into your classroom. So it has to be part of building your classroom behavior and the rules around showing kindness to each other and to the class of a whole. So you start with one and you spread that throughout your classroom culture. Another way you can do this is to provide information and opportunities for students to practice kindness and empathy. So you can tell them, come with me to volunteer, or let's go and feed the poor, or let's do a drive to bring clothes or toys to support those in need. Some teachers have done a more practical or tangible thing, like creating a kindness tree. And the older ones might tease you in secondary school or they might destroy it because, there's so much unkindness out there. But you yourself have to be resilient. So you can create a kindness tree. And it's just a tree that you use Bristol board or whatever you paint it like a mural, and the trunk and the branches are made out of cardboard or whatever, and you pin it to the wall or you paint it on the wall, and then you cut out a whole bunch of leaves. And then anytime one of your students witness an act of kindness, they could write the student's name on the board and then put that on the leaf, and then you place it in a box. And then once a week, you empty the box, read out the acts of kindness, and then you pin the leaves on the trees. That's a nice visible way to let them know that you were kind once and that you are good. Some people have a kindness board where the children draw pictures and they write about how they have been kind to somebody or how somebody has been kind to them. And they're able to share that and see that, we've done something good. And it really creates a feeling of goodness inside of them. You always recognize, help them. because we always recognize it, acts of kindness, such as simply holding the door open or picking up dropped material. So one of the students drop a pencil on the floor, a pen on the floor, their book, they didn't see it, picking it up. And then you reinforce this, you acknowledge that act of kindness, and it's going to support them and in how they grow throughout the year. And you have to be able to, partner with other groups and other classes so that um, and use the teachers and other students to help them in sharing and nurturing that culture of kindness. Another thing that we can do when we want to develop social emotional learning is to ensure that we use emotional vocabulary, build emotional vocabulary in our classrooms. And that is our ability to really express how we are feeling. And of course, you can model this when you don't like your students' behavior, but you also encourage them to use emotional vocabulary as well, because it allows them to use their words to convey how they are feeling to one another. Because really, they may not always have the words to express their feelings, especially if they are younger, which is why it is crucial for them to build their emotional vocabulary. And how do you do that? Well, you can use a synonym chart, for example, words that have the same meaning. And that can help them to build their emotional vocabulary by introducing them to more complex words for more common emotions that they may be experiencing. So you can use it as a reference tool. You can use it when you're teaching, and especially if you're teaching things like reading and literature and so forth, where you try to infer the character's feeling, or when you want to add details in writing. Building social emotional vocabulary gives the children the language to express characteristics that they may be exhibiting or they may be feeling. And kindness is more than just, I mentioned it before opening the door, but it is also, which is what you want to point out to them, being aware of how their actions affect others. It's modeling and naming kindness and action in the classroom. It's the empathy, which is seeing and valuing the humanity in people and celebrating their diversity and inclusion in the classroom, right? Celebrating that diversity and inclusion in the classroom is a really good way to build empathy, because it helps to not for them not only to share complex stories, but to recognize the complexities and the beauty in other cultures. Okay. Another way that we can build social emotional learning in our classrooms as well is to include reflective writing. And luckily, I see that many of the curriculum that we use actually incorporates reflective writing. You're using journals or blogs, or even videos to help students analyze their thoughts and their feelings and their strengths and their weaknesses. And it's important to do that because one, you have many forms that this can take, journals and diaries and all of that, which is an informal way of recording students' thoughts and feelings and experiences, not just with the learning activity, but the experiences with schooling in general. So now you've seen it being used from the elementary level straight up to university level, because it has many benefits for both teachers and students, because it helps in developing not only reflective thinking, but problem solving skills, critical thinking skills, increasing motivation and engagement. And it really serves to build their confidence, not which is why it works for adults as well. Teachers as well need to build their confidence in the classroom, but it gives them also, and by them, I mean teachers, insights into your students' learning styles, into their challenges. And you get the opportunity now to provide feedback and encourage collaboration or dialogue, which would really encourage a positive classroom environment, which is what we are looking for throughout. Another way that you can encourage social emotional learning and develop that in your classroom is by allowing time for talk. A lot of us, yes, we came through the traditional schools where you pass by and the entire classroom is quiet, the entire school is quiet. A quiet class does not mean that learning is taking place, right? That's kind of a passive form of receiving information. You don't know what students are thinking. And a quiet class, if you're thinking that learning is taking place, that's the farthest thing from the truth. So you need to give students a chance to tell you how they feel in their own words and to actively listen to their contributions. We go back to the basic thing of speaking and listening, sharing and allowing children the chance to respond in their own words and actively listening to their contributions, because that is very crucial in supporting their social and emotional development. And you can help them. Sometimes they don't know how to do this in the same way that they don't know how to use their emotional language. So, older ones might not want to do this when you tell them, talk about my feelings and so forth. But I bet you when you start practicing it, everything doesn't have to happen right away. You can introduce sentence starters, for example. If you don't want to do it directly and you want to be more subtle, start with the books that they are reading. Ask them to imagine how a character might complete a sentence, as a way to see how they will respond to using emotional language in the classroom, right? And you give them examples of the sentence starters. You can say, right now, I need, and you let them say what they need instead of jumping up and say, just give me that. Or they can say, it would be helpful if I had, or I'm finding this really hard because, and then you help them, with how they want to start to express. Many times students say, Miss, I don't know how to start this, or Sir, I don't know how to begin. So you say, well, you can start by saying, I wish I could do this. Or if you're talking more about sentence starters and engaging in conversation related to emotion, you can have them say, I am really upset and I don't know what to do. I am really frustrated and I don't know what to do. I am really, and you insert the emotion here, and I don't know why. I'm really annoyed and I don't know why. I'm really anxious and I don't know why. So engaging in these type of strategies and can really help foster social emotional learning, because it allows for a more holistic approach to education. It's not just the missing link, it's going to become the cornerstone of your thriving educational experience. So we want our students to grow and to learn and to lead with empathy and resilience, and more importantly, integrity. We want kind students because we want a kind society. Remember, you empower minds and you ignite curiosity. You have been listening to Lana the Educator.